This video will contain gigantic size spoilers for Zero Escape Volume 1, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. If you have not played this title and do not want to get spoiled, then go get sucked into one of the most enthralling narrative titles for 20-ish hours, and then you can come back and watch. The last thing I want to do is rob an individual of experiencing this game blind. If you have completed the game or do not care about spoilers, then welcome. Let's begin. I've played a lot of video games. There's always a great feeling of hype and anticipation as you anxiously sit there for the release of a long-awaited title. The hype cycles leading towards Metal Gear Solid V and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U were some of my most delightful times as a gamer. But one of the best feelings comes with finding that one game hidden in the sea of a medium that can make such a huge impact on your way of thinking and change your view on video games as a whole. For me, that game came in the form of a little DS title called 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. Directed and written by Kotaro Uchikoshi, who also wrote the Infinity series and the anime Punchline, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, or 999 for short, is a visual novel puzzle game originally released for the Nintendo DS in late 2009, and has since made its way to iOS in the form of purely a novel and a part of Zero Escape, the Nonary games for the PS4, Vita, and PC. The game is centered around a colorful cast of 9 characters who were captured by someone named Zero and are being forced to participate in something called the Nonary game. The captives have 9 hours to seek an exit via a door marked with the number 9 before imminent death awaits them. I had briefly heard about the title through videos like Dookie Shed's 5 Best Handheld Games, but I never thought of it much until a friend of mine let me borrow her copy during my sophomore year of college. I took the game back home with me for winter break and started it up one day. I remember speaking with a friend after a couple hours and telling them that I liked the game, but didn't think it was that superb so far. As the night dragged on and a couple more hours passed, I reached an ending. I was left confused and exceedingly curious concerning the events. Why the hell did I just get stabbed in the back with a knife? Who did this? Why did it say bad end? It was at this point that my slight amusement with the game turned into an obsession, and I needed to satiate my desire for answers.
This is an extreme thirst!
After 2 more nights of staying up until 6 a.m. and through teary eyes, I beat the game, and was hit with the realization just as the light of dawn was peering through my windows. 999 was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. The title has this incredible sense of capturing your attention and presenting you with so many questions and theories that it's awfully difficult to put the game down. As a result, I believe the game masterfully engages the players and presents a truly gripping story through compelling characters, gameplay that serves to enhance the narrative, and a twist on the usual method of storytelling within the genre that is heightened by the original release's hardware. When considering the various versions, I regard the DS version as the strongest for storytelling purposes, but the Nonary Games version has several big advantages at the cost of that narrative strength. As a result, I'll be using clips from the PS4 version and comparing it to the original release since, well, I lack a DS capture card. With that said, let's begin to seek a way out. When first looking at 999, one of the finest aspects is how well the game establishes an eerie tone and sinister atmosphere as if something could be lurking around any corner. This idea carries from the dimly lit rooms with a high emphasis on shadows to the bone-chilling soundtrack that conveys a sense of danger, with a faint glimmer of hope in some sections. Even the second print of the box art does excellently in giving the player a good impression of the game's tone and still allowing a player to enter in blind. This feeling translates well into gameplay, which is split up into 2 forms, the visual novel section and the puzzle rooms. The novel sections primarily consist of reading through the dialogue, occasionally choosing between text choices, and selecting your path of progression. These sections are less about interactivity and traditional gameplay, but rather formulated around critical thinking. Questions like, how should I respond to this conversation, what door should I enter, and how do the themes of each door connect are all a part of the experience. On the subject of considering traditional gameplay, it's the puzzle rooms that are the real substance. When entering an escape room, players will be introduced to a point-and-click style where you need to gather objects and information to solve various challenges. These can range from using objects with visual guides that'll assist in discovering a code for a briefcase, to reconstructing a mannequin to a specific weight value, to using digital roots in an assortment of manners. For clarity's sake, a digital root is a value that can be discovered by taking the sum of digits until you have one remaining. For example, the number 15 would add the 1 and 5 together to get a digital root of 6. While this might appear to be pretty trivial and meaningless past a couple puzzles, in actuality it serves as a major catalyst to story progression. More on that later. What I adore about 999's puzzles are how fitting they are to the theme of the room, but some can go beyond the confines of the room to foreshadow potential plot details or even serve as red herrings. Although I feel that 999's puzzles are much easier than its successor, and there were only a few obstacles that proved to be tricky or difficult. I still enjoy these puzzles, and I love that amazing feel of euphoria you get upon completing a troublesome task like in Virtue's Last Reward. The game's soundtrack, with its focus on industrial and ambient styles, also does well in presenting the player this feeling of tension or a surge of emotions through the various puzzle rooms or novel sections. Songs like Quinary Game and Scenary Game have this low, creepy quality that never fails to give me goosebumps. One of my favorite aspects of this soundtrack is how thematic it is to the trapped on a boat aquatic setting of the game. You can even hear features like whale cries and sonar noises in Quinary Game, or faint bubble noises in Extreme Extrication. However, the most ominous song award goes to Eternity Box, with its ability to just dig under your skin and send this cold chill down your spine like you know something isn't right. .999's music offers really emotional or vibe pieces too. Tranquility is a personal favorite song to listen to when I want to relax, and 9 Years is a beautifully hopeful piece that befits a conclusion. Recollection has a bittersweet melody that is absolutely crushing with context and amplifies the scene it accompanies. But there's one song in particular, and one puzzle that goes with it. Oh boy. Overall, the puzzles in 999 serve as welcome breaks between the novel sections due to their interactive nature, and trying to digest all that text at once can be a bit much. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, the puzzles are only a part of the full experience, and they serve as tools for showcasing the characters and story of 999 to make the title truly unforgettable. .999's story has an enormous amount of content to work with, and while I don't expect to cover every single element, I plan on analyzing a lot of the details and information presented in each room due to its general importance in the larger picture. Let's start with the basics. You take control of Junpei, a college student that was captured by a masked individual going by the name of Zero. Junpei wakes up in a cabin with a strange bracelet decorated with the number 5 and a huge flow of water seeping into the room, but he manages to solve the room's puzzles to escape drowning.
We've managed to avoid drowning. Good job.
After being washed into the main lobby of their captive area, Junpei encounters 8 other individuals with bracelets of their own that each have a number 1 through 9. The characters, going in order of 1 through 9, include Ace, an older level-headed man, Snake, a blind gentleman that values logic, Santa, a hot-headed guy that does not shy away from speaking his mind, Clover, a younger girl and the sister of Snake, Junpei, or Jumpy as referred to by Akane, a childhood friend of Junpei, Seven, a tough guy suffering from a case of amnesia, Lotus, a smart and quick-to-anger woman if her age is brought into question, and the Knife Man, who, dies almost immediately, which actually establishes a very grave tone quite early in the narrative. As I mentioned previously, the goal of these individuals as dictated by Zero is to travel through the numbered doors to find the door marked 9 and escape before the 9-hour time limit. Title established. Also, expect to be hearing the number 9 a lot. From there, Junpei must choose between a selection of doors to find the number 9 door and escape, starting with the pair of 4 and 5. While it might not be immediately apparent, 999 at its core is built off of a system with multiple endings, and your door order and dialogue choices will influence the ending you are given. Here's where the digital roots come back into the picture outside of puzzles, as you need to have between 3 to 5 people with a digital root equivalent to the number painted on said door to pass through. What I appreciate about the story device is not only how it is thematic to the nonary game and allows for creative thinking beyond what's presented at a given time, but it acts as a tool for the player to spend time with each of the fellow escapees in some fashion. Want to keep an eye on 7 because he seems suspicious, or spend some quality time with June? You can do that whenever the situation calls for it. I also love 999's characters due to how alive they feel and the sense of chemistry they have with one another. When developing characters, Kotaro Uchikoshi used an Enneagram, a psyche chart that maps out 9 different personalities, and I think it worked out really well. How did I know that? That wasn't in the script. Well, that's curious, but yes, that's true. Each of the characters' personalities is really fleshed out through their language, manner of speaking, and even the text bleeps that are present in the DS game. Each person has a noise of a varying pitch, which is a nice detail and adds to their established character. The nonary games version added voice acting, which can feel a bit awkward in some situations, but for a majority of the time it's exceptionally well done. Evan Smith does a wonderful job as Junpei. It's always good to hear some Richard Epcar and... wait.
Snake! Did you like my sunglasses?
Liquid!
These characters each have some semblance of importance within the narrative as well, whether it's due to their history or current situation. For the most part, characters don't necessarily feel like they're shoved to the wayside as the narrative progresses. Withholding some of the larger spoilers about these characters until they appear in crucial moments, let's start with the protagonist Junpei. Junpei, in more ways than one, acts as a conduit for the player and is relatable in the sense that we can empathize with his reactions and decisions in such a stressful predicament. He can be funny, frustrated, and awkward, but at the end of it all, he's just a young adult that was forced into a situation with no knowledge of his role in the grand scheme of things. As I mentioned earlier, I think the vocal work does a wonderful job in giving Junpei more personality and emotion, especially near the game's climax. Seven's a pretty intriguing character because he takes the trope of an amnesiac, yet it's attached to a side character rather than a lead. There are times where a lot of suspicion can be cast on him, but once his history as a cop and with the nonary games is revealed, he becomes rather trustworthy. He of course also has his moments of humor. Clover goes through a lot of hardships for the story with the loss of her brother, but she could be a pretty fun character when she's not around any sharp objects. Ace feels as if he fits the experienced older leader figure decently well, and Snake is a huge fan favorite. Santa is such an enjoyable character with how crude and brash he is, but he has powerful moments of his own, such as the story of the 2 Santas presented at the end of the engine room. Finally, we have Akane, who is my personal favorite character in 999, and one of my favorites of all time. Akane is depicted as cheerful, quirky, and flirtatious when Junpei is with her. She has a good heart, which is exemplified through her issues with leaving people behind. She believes in Santa Claus and is incredibly superstitious, and truthfully, I feel she brings this sense of joy or intrigue whenever she is involved. But what I appreciate the most about Akane is how there is much more to her than meets the eye. Back on the subject of story with a more detail-oriented lens, players can choose to go through Door 4 with Akane, Santa, and Lotus to explore the second-class cabin and the kitchen, or Door 5 with Seven and Snake to scope out the first-class cabin and the casino. The primary puzzles behind Door 4 will lead the player to completing a picture of the mythical Funyo Rimpa and escaping from the clutches of a freezer, respectively. These objectives might seem trivial, but they lead to discussions with your group about scientific topics which may or may not hold significance. Due to a study Lotus recalls related to the picture, its presence instigates a conversation about morphogenetic fields, which were proposed by Rupert Sheldrake to be invisible fields in which information, thoughts, and behavioral patterns can be transferred between living organisms. By proposing such a concept, the player might feel that this topic will have importance but in a straightforward way presented later in the story, or that it's simply flavor text to give personality to the room, much like the Metal Gear series does via codec calls. With the kitchen, we get a Zelda cartoon show joke? That's just so random. I won't lie, this got a chuckle out of me, but at least it's better than the alternative.
Great! I'll grab my stuff!
But the central point is a discussion about Ice 9 in the freezer initiated by Akane. It's definitely not the best time to have a conversation, but it proposes an interesting idea about a type of ice that has a melting point of 96 degrees Fahrenheit. This concept connects back to the mummy that is referenced to possibly be aboard the ship, and Akane's mention of curses and futility mentioned earlier in the kitchen. I find the purpose of these short discussions to not only lay the groundwork for future interactions and reveals, but to offer so many concepts like morphogenetic fields and Ice 9 to the player that they almost underestimate the significance they might have long term. Door 4, I believe, is the choice with the most content to unravel and take in, but that doesn't discredit the other option. Behind Door 5, Snake, 7, and Junpei will solve a puzzle involving the collection of music sheets to perform a song. However, players might come across a lone save during their exploration. Playing the song in the piano unlocks the exit, but the safe plays no purpose in the path leading towards escaping. What's so ingenious about the safe as a variable is its distinction as the only interactable object in the game where a future purpose is indicated, but never directly related to the puzzle, thus presenting questions and further curiosity in the secrets held aboard the ship. Aside from the safe, there's nothing too noteworthy that happens besides learning about Seven's hazy memory and more on Snake's talents despite being blind. After exiting either door 4 or 5, the group reaches a large hospital room with doors 3, 7, and 8, and reunites with the party that went through the opposite door. After exploring more of the ship, Snake winds up missing, and after fruitless efforts of finding him, the party decides to move on despite Clover's objections. Snake's disappearance and Clover's chagrin are employed to create tension and disillusion within the group, which only serves to build this evolution of emotions. In the early game, fear is established with the ninth man pulling a pause and the uncertainty of the situation. Going through door 4 or 5 and connecting more with the characters, especially Akane in door 4, might make some of those feelings of terror subside. But 999 preys on the player feeling the emotion it dictates at a given time, so it expands on those feelings of fear by showing how anybody can go missing, and the people we're beginning to learn about might not be what they seem. Although the group plans to move on, the current values will not allow them to scan through the doors, so Ace volunteers to stay behind and takes a dose of a drug called Sopril Beta, which knocks him out. At this crossroad, Junpei needs to decide to go door 7, which makes for an awkward experience for the operating room with Clover and 7, or door 8 that'll have Junpei check out the laboratory accompanied by Clover and Lotus. Door 3 is an option that leads to the shower room if you really wish to be with Akane, but doing so screws over multiple individuals and locks you into going through door 2 later. Within the operating room beyond the metal barrier of door 7 are puzzles using a variety of chemicals and 2 medical dolls that need to have parts swapped to reach an appropriate weight. Furthermore, 7 recalls some memories about a chemical where crystals started to communicate with each other, which can go in different directions based on your previous door choice and dialogue options. What's great about this adaptive dialogue is how the game chooses what information is relevant or important to reveal to the player for the sake of adding more onto the previous hints, such as the story of Ice 9 that started in the freezer. There's also an optional interaction with Clover depending on whether you give her a story item or not, which will lead into a discussion on Theseus' ship or Locked Sock as a parallel to the 2 medical dolls that were mixed and matched to escape. Again, the story behind each room is emphasized by puzzles, which makes the mention of topics seem merited and logically placed within the story. As for what's behind door number 8, the laboratory's puzzles are centered around a computer in the corner and passing items or instructions back and forth between Clover. Much like the operating room, your first round door selection will impact your interactions with Lotus at the computer and Clover at the end. With door 5, the computer is used as a catalyst for conversation regarding the human mind and how it processes thoughts, which is used as a way to reference the topic of morphogenetic fields, a theory the player would have missed by skipping door 4. Lotus doesn't use the word directly, which allows for the player to potentially use their deduction skills to create a link if they had chosen door 4 in a past playthrough. Door 5 allows for more knowledge concerning Snake and how he has a prosthetic left arm. I believe this particular conversation really accentuates on the internal debate with the player whether the information being presented in all of these segments is important or not. It relies on the player's attention to detail or ability to draw connections outside of what the narrative itself has explicitly said. Whether you went through door 7, 8, or 3, you'll find yourself back in the hospital room with a recently awakened Ace, and the unfortunate news that Snake's corpse was found in the shower room. Clover loses almost all motivation and becomes overly suspicious that some members of the group forced Snake through the third door and killed him. At this point, the buildup of tension and doubt within the group has reached a boiling point to nail in the desperateness of the situation as the time winds down and 2 people of the original 9 have died. In the struggle to escape not only the boat but the rising danger, Junpei is presented with the option of going door 1 with Clover and Ace to the chart room and captain's quarters, door 2 with 7 and Lotus to the confinement and torture room, and lastly door 6 with Akane, Ace, and Santa to the engine and cargo room. Door 1's main point of interest is a dead man in a captain's uniform with a bracelet inscribed with the number 0. While this might startle the player for a bit, the possibility of the man actually being 0 is dropped quite quickly. As for the other door of great importance, door 6 has Akane suffering from another fever like the ones experienced earlier, and Santa shares that he has a sister and a story about 2 Santa Clauses. The story is quite thought-provoking with endgame context as well, since it addresses the conflicted nature of Santa. Is everything he's done really right, or is he truly a killer in the end? Aside from that, the cargo room has a golden gun, which is probably the worst thing to introduce to a chaotic group like this, but also 9 cards placed around the room with faces of each character. The positioning of each card tells us a lot about the relationships of these characters and their respective role, with Snake and Clover being found next to each other, Ace isolated, and Akane and Junpei in close proximity. This detail gives a bit of personality to the area, and it's a cute tidbit for cognizant players. If you choose to go through door 1, you'll be given the axe ending, where Clover has killed 3 people for revenge against what happened to her brother, and eventually finishes off Junpei with a swift axe to the back. This is probably the worst ending to get, but it creates this strong relationship in the player and bolsters 2 lines of thought. Either A, stay near Clover so you can find out how events could possibly be changed to not get Paul Bunyaned, or B, stay as far away from Clover to seek what awaits behind doors 2 and 6. Despite being deemed a bad ending, it ignites a spark that invokes curiosity, and 999 is a game that rewards this inquisitive nature of the player. The option at door 6 will provide a revelation about the history of the ship you are on and its role in a nonary game that took place 9 years ago. The original nonary game was revealed to have been held by a corporation named Cradle Pharmaceutical, which captured 18 children and split them between 2 testing sites, one in the Nevada desert and one aboard this ship known as the Gigantic. The purpose behind their kidnapping was to test the effectiveness of telepathic connections among children with strong relationships. This information is disclosed by Seven, who was a cop sent in to investigate the docks on the night that the children were being taken to the boat. Seven ended up captured and imprisoned in the same confinement rooms, which jogs his memory of the experiment. After escaping his detainment, Seven manages to grab the kids and make his escape. One of the children he saved, Nona, is confirmed to be Lotus's daughter in the torture area, which further solidifies the connection that these individuals have in the grand scheme of things. It provides history and context to the environment that fills in some of the blanks, but not all of them. Such information will provoke players to begin questioning how Junpei fits into the picture, and how this past nonary game's research might connect to what is happening currently. Door 6 will yield the knife ending, which shows Junpei stumbling across Lotus's dead body with the bracelet missing, and then he is swiftly stabbed in the back. This was the first ending I got that really encouraged me to run through the game again to satiate my need for answers. I was incredibly confused on who exactly killed me and why Lotus's bracelet might be gone. Yet 999 answers some of these questions through knowledge conveyed in other endings and details presented earlier on. For example, we're aware the Knife Man had a knife, which he used to take Clover hostage earlier, so this leads to the question of who retrieved the knife from his body and who went through door 5 on this playthrough. Also, if players receive the axe ending, then they'll hear some curious dialogue about Ace wanting to show Lotus something, which he would show to Junpei soon after. Keep that in mind. These are just 2 examples of small details that will either raise new questions for the player to work through or use as evidence to unravel some of the game's mysteries. Finally, there's the sub-ending, which is granted by entering door 2. Out of what are considered the 3 normal endings, this is the heaviest and most impactful. The result is finding the bodies of Santa, Clover, and Ace slumped over in a pool of blood resting at the base of the main stairs, and a final moment with Akane beyond a set of metal doors. The 2 share a poignant scene that uses the pre-established childhood relationship as a method of leaving the player empty, since these characters will never get to make good on their hopes and promises. Junpei and Akane's interaction does well in selling the relationship between these characters and the damage the nonary games have caused, but I conclude it's better suited for another scenario. After tragedy strikes, Junpei has lost his will and makes his way toward a submarine, but is stabbed in the back by a faceless silhouette before escaping. The dialogue calls attention to the knife, which might sound familiar to a previous ending, and now has players piecing together the information. Who could have possibly killed Junpei? Who was still alive at the end of this playthrough that could have done it? I think the greatest strength of the sub-ending is how much it elevates the scale of the situation when compared to the axe and knife endings. The axe ending offers a tale of the mental tolls the game has on individuals with Clover's insanity and allows the player to illustrate the imagery of Santa, Seven, and Akane's demise, but the madness is contained to a known culprit. The knife ending hints at more insidious intentions coming from an unknown individual as the murderer has killed to take a bracelet and moves in the shadows. Comparatively, the sub-ending shows mass murders across the cast, and the addition of Akane and Junpei sharing a final moment emblemizes this show-don't-tell notion that pulls at the heartstrings. Yet there's still the mysterious X factor in the murderer with a knife, so the sub-ending practically acts as an extension of the knife ending. In regards to which ending I believe is the best to get first, I think the knife ending gives the player enough of a desire to start another playthrough with its ability to forge curiosity and an eagerness to solve the mystery. Such an ending also distracts the player from the scientific ideas, such as morphogenetic fields in Ice 9, that are present in the narrative since individuals, like myself, may become single-minded in their pursuit of the murderer. In spite of these endings, a whole level of revelations and emotional moments lie with 999's special endings. Going for the order 5, 8, and 6 will present you with an ending that blows the lid off everything that has happened previously. Normally, door 6 will conclude with the knife ending. However, the safe left untouched behind door number 5 becomes a game changer. Door 8, as a result of choosing door 5, will then hold information regarding morphogenetic fields, prosopagnosia, a condition that leads to the inability to identify faces, and Snake's prosthetic arm. If the player chooses door 4 before entering door 8, then this information will not be obtainable, which I find fairly interesting. Once door 6 is completed, Clover's body is found in the first class cabin with the zero bracelet and a note. With the information at his disposal, Junpei realizes who the murderer is and calls everyone back to the hospital room. Junpei is able to conclude that Ace is the murderer and Gentaro Hungo, the original creator of the Nonary games, through deducing that Ace has prosopagnosia and had killed Snake's doppelganger with the Ninth Man's bracelet. The sequence exercises a really nice battle of wits, and how the accumulated information the player has received from this playthrough and past ones is coming together to solve one of the several mysteries presented. The history of Cradle Pharmaceutical and the condition of prosopagnosia are both presented with this specific run, but teased as well, like with Ace's decline to help Junpei with sorting out the cards in the cargo room. Failing to do such a simple task would blow Ace's cover since he lacks the audio cues to distinguish individuals. This notion is even one that Junpei manages to trick Ace with, which makes this reveal feel warranted and properly built towards. After Ace's cover is blown and he admits to his crimes, he takes Lotus hostage and moves for the number 9 door. Akane suffers another fever, so Santa stays behind to help her, while Seven and Junpei give chase. Once they reach the chapel and hear a knocking on the coffin, Junpei uses the clue from Clover's note to open the coffin, where Snake emerges with a swapped wardrobe. These clues are not necessarily significant for the events of 999, but they are questioned and placed for later developments in the series that make for a nice attention to potential story routes this early in the saga. The trio moves for the number 9 door with the assistance of the Captain's bracelet to find Lotus and Ace in the incinerator, and Snake is given the unfortunate news about his sister, to which Ace just continuously pushes in. It's rage-inducing and understandable why Snake would lash out in such a fit of anger. This moment specifically is what makes Snake the fan-favorite character. The determination to see his goal through to the end despite having over 5 bullets pumped into him, the music intensifying the emotion, and Junpei's desperation to save Snake all combine into an excellently executed scene that gives Snake a melancholy send-off as he uses his strength to take Ace down with him. I especially love Ace seeking a meaning to this new Nonary game by screaming out for Zero in anguish. Snake and Ace are burnt to a crisp, and a disheartened Junpei goes to find Santa and Akane, but is only greeted by one of the game's most powerful emotional moments. Much like the sub-ending, Junpei finds Akane lying in bad shape on the floor, but this time she is sprawled out on the floor of the chapel. Recollection kicks in, and the recent event with Snake and the tone established with the location and music makes for a more powerful version than what was depicted in the sub-ending. This interaction feels unrefined and natural in a way that allows us to feel the sorrow in Junpei's loss. However, the moment is interrupted by Zero's voice booming throughout the room and the first time that they've been heard since the introductory sequence. This moment right here marks my favorite instance of voice acting in the Nonary Games version.
Zero. You son of a bitch! Where are you hiding?
The pure fury and despair heard in Junpei's voice, as well as the escalation of this line in particular, makes everything seem so astonishingly real. Evan Smith absolutely killed it with the delivery of this section, and it's moments like these that make me really appreciate the addition of voice acting to 999. All of this builds towards the largest tease at the real purpose for each ending. Because you chose the wrong path. I know for me, I audibly said, "What?" at this line because I was confused about the true intentions. What follows is my favorite line in the entire game.
I told you! I am not gonna lose! What?
What an utter mindfuck. The safe ending alludes to a deeper purpose behind the whole game, but it raises so many questions that it leaves the player awestruck and in this state of disbelief. Junpei leaves to find Zero, but when he comes back, Akane has outright disappeared, leading to another showcase of unbridled emotion. With our minds blown, Junpei passes out on the floor, and the credits roll, concluding the safe ending. I've played a lot of video games. There's always a great feeling of hype and anticipation as you anxiously sit there for the release of a long-awaited title. The hype cycles leading towards Metal Gear Solid V and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U were some of my most delightful times as a gamer. But one of the best feelings comes with finding that one game hidden in the sea of a medium that can make such a huge impact on your way of thinking and change your view on video games as a whole. Why does this feel so familiar? Wait, this isn't right. Why do I feel like I've... chosen the wrong path? If it wasn't door number 6, then it must be door number 1. I got it. Here it is, the final stretch, and I do not use that lightly, as not only is this last branch of the flowchart much longer than one would expect, the onslaught of revelations and emotional punches the game throws at you are ceaseless. After achieving the safe ending, Junpei must move through doors 4, 7, and 1, and respond to certain dialogue scenarios correctly. For example, the bookmark must be taken from Santa in door 4 and given to Clover in door 7. The position of the sequence where Santa gives you the bookmark is well thought out, since Santa acts in a very strange and blunt manner when trying to give you the bookmark, but since it's early in the story and we're unfamiliar with how these characters work, the player may shrug off the bizarre interaction. When Santa says he hates the number 4, it's a bit on the nose and hits at Clover's potential breakdown that could be witnessed in the axe ending, so it entices the player to stay near Clover and discover why Santa hates such a number. This in turn offers an opportunity to give Clover the bookmark. Junpei must also inquire about Ice 9 in the freezer and reintroduce the topic with 7 in the operating room. The topic of morphogenetic fields is also introduced to the player early on in this run-through, which is crucial to the later developments in this ending. Once Junpei has made it through the final door, instead of the usual knife to the back, the player is presented with the unfolding of a new set of events. Santa takes Akane as a hostage with the golden gun that was found in the cargo room and forces Ace and Lotus to help him move through a number 9 door. At this point in the story, Ace has been shown to be one hell of a guy, and Clover has axe murdered you, so really Santa's sudden action is just another event on the what the hell is going on roller coaster. Much like the safe ending, Junpei and company are able to free Snake from the coffin, but this time Clover is there for a heartfelt reunion, and we didn't technically obtain the information from the safe. But happy moments such as these amidst the chaos of the Nonary game are welcomed, and this scene in particular is strengthened through our knowledge of how this reunion had the potential to never exist. Usually games will play out in a linear fashion, but knowing the potentiality makes the other perspectives more apparent in the mind of the player, which consequently gives the true ending scene depth and weight. The group has a discussion about the true identity of Zero, where it is concluded that Santa's bracelet must actually be a 0, and Akane's 6 must be the result of a flipped 9 bracelet. If you recall the box art, I always thought the framing of Akane and Junpei's arms allude to her true number. From the base perspective, we have Akane's hand right side up and Junpei's upside down, although the 5 is still perfectly legible. But what if we were to rotate it so that Junpei's was right side up? The information presented to the player on what would likely be their introduction to the title holds a twist of its own, and this isn't that far-fetched since 999 isn't the only Zero Escape title to do this. Following the party scanning into the other number 9 door, the final 2 rooms that lurk on the other side are a colossal library and a messy study. The library's primary function is to reintroduce Rupert Sheldrake and the theory of morphogenetic fields into the player's mind, while the study has a whole list of purposes, but two in particular. A pseudo-answer to the location of All-Ice or Alice, and a depiction of what happened in the last Nonary games 9 years ago. 7 sees a picture of the original 4 members of the Nonary game, who were Ace, the Ninth Man, the Dead Man in the Captain's Quarters, and the last one, which is deduced to be Snake's dead doppelganger. The picture sparks 7's memory and shows a tale of how he rescued several kids from the very same incinerator we saw in the safe ending. However, he was unable to save a little girl who Ace grabbed. If you pay close attention to the design of the kids, you'll notice that Santa, known as Oeyu Koroshiki, Snake, and Lotus's daughter are among them. I think this is a cute detail that gives more life to the scene rather than using shadowed silhouettes, but there's one oddity. The name of the girl who they could not save was Akane, specifically Akane Koroshiki. Okay, I personally feel this revelation is when the seeds of doubt 999 has planted have grown uncontrollably. Santa and Akane are siblings? How could Akane possibly be here today if she died 9 years ago? Is Junpei in love with a ghost? Much like I stated earlier, 999's strength as a narrative partly feeds on the player's reactions to situations and creating a web of possibilities. Ultimately, Junpei and company reach the incinerator, where the next set of bombs are dropped. Santa is truly Aoi Koroshiki, but he's merely an assistant to Zero, and the Nonary games were designed to save someone rather than simple revenge. Junpei's random flashes are brought into question, much like how the player would be curious how they've received such information. How could Junpei possibly know information he's never seen before in this playthrough? It's because Junpei has had memories attained from other playthroughs transferred across the morphogenetic field as a method of being guided to the true ending. As we as the players were storing knowledge and adapting to move towards a logical conclusion, so was Junpei. This is the moment that blew my mind. Such a link creates a relationship between the player and protagonist that not only breaks the fourth wall, but spins the typical story presentation of multiple endings on its head. While each ending might not present the same amount of information or be of the same magnitude in the overall scheme, they're each important in guiding you towards the true end with tidbits of knowledge that make the story itself this puzzle to be unraveled. In a magnificent revelation, a past Akane declares that she was the true mastermind in the Nonary game. Her future was Zero. Akane has been watching Junpei through the morphogenetic fields and guiding him here to save her from the fate of the incinerator in the first Nonary game. There's a section of dialogue I absolutely love, where Akane mentions how she experiences and feels everything that Junpei has, like they are one entity, yet separated at the same time. It's a connection like this that I don't think we can truly fathom, but we can imagine that it must be undoubtedly surreal. To be so closely linked with another person and to share in all of their pains and emotions, it's beautifully poetic. Those small fevers that Akane would get as you're playing through the game also represent when choices or events had gone wrong and Akane is getting closer to losing her existence in the past from the incinerator heating up. It's small details like these that I see in games like Xenoblade that really add to the experience and the player's immersion. Although the screen-centered twist is what I'd likely consider the greatest difference between versions. On the DS version, typically all information in the novel sections that was not spoken dialogue or internal thoughts was presented on the bottom screen from a narrator perspective. Even decisions have this past tense connotation that seems relatively funky in that moment. The answer to this is that the bottom screen has been Akane transferring answers and information to you the entire time. The bottom screen was not the interactable screen simply because the DS is designed that way, it was a conduit for Akane to help Junpei. This right here is the pinnacle of storytelling to me. Creating a competent narrative is a respectable task on its own, but the narrative relies on the DS hardware to structure its twist and character relationships. What this means is that 999, with its reliance on multiple endings in succession and a twofold perspective to tell its narrative, is a story that can only be told successfully through the medium of video games. In the Nonary Games version, you've probably noticed the novel and adventure screen tab in the top right. This is the substitute for having two screens where the novel screen is Akane's perspective and the adventure is Junpei. This is even noted with the change to Akane and Junpei vision at this moment. While I understand the inability to capture the same influence due to the massive difference in DS hardware with the other systems, this change doesn't exactly hit home comparatively in the slightest. This whole sequence of twists and turns was what mainly left such a momentous impact on me, and I feel a lot of its charm is stripped away with the omission of 2 screens. And the imagery of Akane looking into the screen with tears streaming down her face, and Junpei with a show of determination saying he will save Akane, helps to solidify the role reversal, and honestly just presents this desire to see them make it out of this. And then we're presented with the final puzzle. 999 had already proved to me that it was the best use of the DS's dual screens with his success at using the hardware for crafting a narrative, but the imagery presented here solidified it. An upside down Sudoku puzzle on the bottom screen and a young crying Akane on the top screen. The whole game has had Akane working through the morphogenetic fields via the bottom screen to guide Junpei to this very moment, and now the roles are reversed with Akane needing help. To represent this shift in perspective, the DS must be flipped to properly view the puzzle and transmit the information. In my opinion, this all culminates into one of the most innovative and brilliant moments in a video game. And if that wasn't enough, morphogenetic sorrow plays in the background. This track accompanies a couple stages throughout the game, but I've been holding off discussing this piece since I believe this song best represents the raw emotions of this scene. To be perfectly honest, I find it incredibly difficult to describe how exactly this song makes me feel. It has this air of hopelessness and unfathomable sadness, but there's a trace of determination lying below the surface. I've searched long for a song that could give me a similar feel to that which Final Hours from Majora's Mask gave me, and I finally found it in the place that I least expected it. It's quite funny that the most crucial and significant puzzle is a simple Sudoku, but there's actually some special meaning behind its inclusion. The goal of a Sudoku is to fill it out so that the numbers 1 through 9 will fill out every row, column, and box on the puzzle. 9 filled out in 3 ways, huh? It's symbolic of the entire journey. This might sound incredibly strange, but I had never attempted a Sudoku puzzle before this moment. I knew what they were, but didn't exactly know what they entailed. So being put on the spot, I believe really enveloped me in the stressful situation that Junpei and Akane were in. With everything this scene has to offer, the tragedy these cherished characters are experiencing, I teared up. On the final puzzle, 999 broke me. Concerning the Nonary games, its version of the puzzle to me lacks much of the impact and weight that the DS version so masterfully captures. The puzzle was changed from a Sudoku to a simple fill-in-the-blank board puzzle, and the duality of Akane and Junpei's roles is lost in the translation. While I still view the Nonary games version as a suitable method of experiencing this title in a much more convenient, flexible manner, these changes in the final act are what I believe hurt this version and make the DS version stand out as the definitive one. After submitting the answer to Akane, the two have this moment of disbelief and pure elation at their success. There's a couple lines where Akane just takes in the joy of being alive and says her heart felt like it would burst every time she thought of him. Even Junpei has a line about his heart being on fire, which could be attributed to both the stress and heat of the situation, but his strong desire to save Akane. It's strengthened even more when we see a flashback scene to Junpei and Akane talking on a hill before Akane moves away. There's just this childlike wonder and charm here that presents the viewer with a look into how the lives of these two simple children have become so entangled from this moment. These examples are adorable and further exhibit that relationship between these characters, as there is a genuine attachment between them as people and through the morphogenetic field. And that's what 999 does so well. It synthesizes aspects of story, visuals, and gameplay to craft this wonderful experience that innovates the genre. It's a game that excels at inciting emotions in the player and using its mystery and psychological horror elements to elevate the stakes and immersion of the player, and this is demonstrated in 999's final act. Soon after the puzzle, Akane then escapes and is reunited with her brother and the other victims in the Nonary game to escape with Seven via a boat in the past. In the present, Junpei and the gang make a hasty escape from the incinerator, and yearning to see Akane, he flings open the last door to find himself in the middle of a desert in Nevada. As the cast of the Nonary games drive with Ace tied up in the back, in the pursuit of Santa and Akane, and Clover behind the wheel, they reflect on the past events and stumble across a familiar-looking woman standing on the side of the road, thus ending 999 and one of my favorite games of all time. But we're left with several questions. Was that woman on the side of the road truly all ice? Where did Akane go? Will Akane and Junpei ever get their happy ending? Well, I think for those, we'll find our answer eventually. Hey everyone, Kjors here. I'm gonna keep this brief since this video has already far exceeded the length of my previous ones, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video and all of the continued support. We actually managed to pass 600 subscribers, which is just absolutely absurd. I really did not imagine that to happen before the end of the year, and really that's just thanks to you guys. If Zero Escape perhaps is something you didn't really know about, then I hope you found some enjoyment from this and maybe feel motivated to pick up the series. It's one of my favorites and it's just an absolutely wonderful experience. I'll likely be throwing a game from another series or a one-off every 2 or so Xenoblade videos just to keep it fresh and because there are so many awesome games out there that I'd love to talk about. If you're waiting for more Xenoblade related content, then no worries, I have you covered. I'll be revisiting the series next video, and I already have several more ideas planned out for the future, so look forward to those. Aside from that, if you enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a like or subscribe, as it really does help the channel grow, and I'd love to see where we can take this by the end of the year. Also, if you have any ideas for future videos, or if you just want to spark some general discussion, feel free to leave a comment because I absolutely love talking with you guys down there. And while I might not be able to respond to every single one of them, I do try to read them, just because I do really appreciate all of the support and just the ideas you guys are providing. Anyways, that's all I really have to say, so again, thank you, and until next time.